There may be a moment while the whole lot shifts, whilst someone who clearly sees you, who understands your deepest wounds, who speaks the exact phrases your soul craves to pay attention, reveals they were in no way on your facet in any respect. The warm temperature you felt wasn't real, the safety turned into an illusion, and by the point you apprehend what took place, they have already taken what they got here for. This isn't always regular manipulation. This is surgical precision. The parent Machiavelli wrote approximately within the prince, the one who is familiar with electricity, no longer through force, but through intimate expertise of human nature. But what Machiavelli in no way completely explored became the most dangerous variation of all. Whilst a person with actual empathy decides to weaponize their present, you're approximately to discover why the empathic thoughts, while it turns strategic, becomes the most ambitious pressure in human interplay. Now, not through cruelty, but via information, no longer via dominance, however via invisibility. That is the psychology behind what happens when a person who feels the whole thing in the end learns to defend themselves from the whole lot. In a world that punishes emotional depth and rewards shallow performance, there comes a breaking point. You've lived it. You've felt the weight of worrying too much in a society that errors kindness for weak spot. You've watched your sensitivity emerge as a target, your empathy end up a liability, your genuine nature turn out to be something others exploit without moral sense. But earlier, then we discover how this variation unfolds. We need to understand the psychology behind why empathic people come to be targets inside the first location. There may be a predatory intuition in human nature that seeks out people who deliver freely, who feel deeply, who provide authentic care without calculating the price. It's now not conscious malice. It's subconscious opportunism. Humans gravitate toward emotional generosity, the manner moths gravitate closer to mild, frequently burning both the giver and themselves inside the procedure. You found out this through enjoy, now not theory. You determined that your capability to apprehend others' ache made you a magnet for individuals who desired to percentage their struggling in place of heal it. Your potential for forgiveness have become an invite for repeated transgressions. Your willingness to look the quality in human beings became a blindness to their worst intentions. The psychological mechanism is easy but devastating. While you continuously reply to negative remedy with extended effort, you teach others to treat you poorly. While you soak up others' emotions as if they were your own, you turn out to be an outside nervous machine for those who refuse to adjust themselves. Whilst you give an explanation for away others' dangerous conduct, you turn out to be complicit in your personal diminishment. This isn't always your fault, it's your conditioning. Society teaches empathic people that their fee lies of their usefulness to others, that love means sacrifice, that information manner tolerance, that power approach enduring what others cannot. Those ideals create what psychologists call learned helplessness, a kingdom in which you take delivery of dangerous occasions due to the fact you accept as true with you lack the electricity to trade them. But something incredible takes place whilst an empathic character reaches their breaking point. In contrast to folks who destroy into bitterness or cynicism, the evolved empath breaks into readability. They do not lose their capacity to feel. They benefit the potential to pick what merits their emotional investment. Machiavelli understood that power belongs to folks who see truth sincerely, no longer folks who want it were specific. However, he changed into writing about princes and politicians. What he couldn't have foreseen become the normal character, the only who feels deeply, who is familiar with pain, who obviously reads the emotional panorama around them, reaching the equal end via experience in preference to ambition. That is in which the maximum dangerous persona is forged. No longer in the halls of power, however, inside the quiet moments when a person who has given the whole lot realizes they have to forestall bleeding for those who would not bandage their wounds in go back. The alchemy of this transformation is charming from a psychological perspective. What occurs within the mind of someone who makes a decision to shield in preference to undertaking their empathy? The first degree is what trauma researchers call cognitive reorganization, an essential shift in the way you interpret reports and relationships, where when you saw ability, you begin to see patterns, wherein once you made excuses, you start to make observations, wherein after you absorbed chaos, you begin to investigate its supply. This isn't always cynicism. It is pattern recognition applied to human behavior. You begin noticing how positive people handiest touch you after they want something, how conversations constantly seem to middle on their problems, their drama, their wishes, how your victories are met with lukewarm responses at the same time as your struggles appeal to a crowd of recommendation givers who disappear while you honestly put in force their hints. This consciousness creates what philosophers call the Great Disillusionment. Now, not with humanity itself, however, with your previous naive assumptions about human nature. You realize that now not anyone who claims to care truly cares, that not each person who offers help virtually helps, that not each person who speaks of love absolutely loves. But here's in which the transformation will become risky. In place of becoming bitter, you come to be strategic. Rather than ultimate your heart, you put in a security gadget. In preference to taking flight from the sector, you have interaction with it in your own phrases. The mental shift is profound. You move from reactive empathy to responsive empathy. Reactive empathy feels each emotion within the room and takes obligation for managing them. Responsive empathy feels every emotion in the room and chooses consciously which of them deserve attention. This creates what researchers call emotional granularity, the ability to distinguish between subtle variations in emotional experience. You start to apprehend the difference between someone's real pain and their finished ache, among genuine confusion and strategic confusion, between honest errors and convenient oversights. Your nervous system, once constantly activated by using others' emotional chaos, starts off-evolved to settle into a new baseline. You discover that you can witness a person struggling without soaking up it, that you could apprehend someone's anger without being intimidated by way of it, that you could understand someone's manipulation without feeling guilty for now not falling for it. This neurological reorganization creates what neuroscientists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift among special mental frameworks relying at the scenario. Along with your circle of relatives, you is probably warm and open. Along with your near buddies, you is probably playful and susceptible. With manipulative colleagues, you is probably cordial, however impenetrable. The important thing perception is that authenticity does not require consistency throughout all contexts. Being authentic doesn't suggest being the same person in every situation. Emotional intelligence includes the information to realize which aspects of yourself to show to whom and while. This attention liberates you from one among society's most adverse myths, that you owe anybody get entry to your complete emotional spectrum, that hiding factors of yourself is dishonest, that having barriers is egocentric. These beliefs serve those who benefit out of your openness, now not folks that surely care approximately your well-being. The transformation does not announce itself. There may be no dramatic moment, no villainous speech. One day, you really stop explaining yourself to folks that never intended to apprehend. You prevent protecting your barriers to people who see them as boundaries. You prevent wearing the emotional weight of relationships that simplest float in one course. You end up what Machiavelli described as the proper ruler, a person who can be each loved and feared, but who chooses when to expose which face. The distinction is that your state isn't always a nation, it is your personal existence, and your topics are everybody who as soon as took your goodness as a right. However, this metaphor runs deeper than mere private sovereignty. Machiavelli wrote extensively approximately the idea of distinctive feature, not distinctive feature inside the moral experience, however, the potential to evolve skillfully to converting circumstances. For the evolved empath, this indicates growing what psychologists call contextual intelligence, the capability to study conditions as it should be and respond appropriately. You learn to recognize what researchers name emotional hard work asymmetry. Relationships where you continuously offer more emotional guide than you obtain, in which you consider their essential dates while they forget about yours, where you listen to their problems for hours whilst they change the problem when you mention yours, wherein you have fun, their successes enthusiastically while they meet yours with quiet resentment. This popularity does not make you irritated, it makes you knowledgeable. You begin to keep in mind that some humans view relationships as useful resource extraction rather than mutual nourishment. They're not always evil, they truly lack the emotional development to interact in reciprocal intimacy. The Machiavellian perception here is crucial. You cannot change folks who do not want to exchange, however, you can alternate how you respond to them. You can't control their behavior, but you could manipulate their get right of entry to you. You cannot lead them to price you as it should be, however you could stop undervaluing yourself to make them relaxed. This creates what social psychologists name boundary paradox. The more sincerely you define your limits, the greater appealing you turn out to be to healthful humans, and the extra threatening you come to be to unhealthy ones. Your barriers act as a filter out, obviously selecting for people who can appreciate limits and filtering out people who cannot. The technique is not smooth. There is regularly a period of what therapists name extinction burst, in which folks that are used on your antique patterns will accentuate their efforts to repair the previous dynamic. They may become extra annoying, extra guilt-inducing, more dramatic in their attempts to breach your new boundaries. That is where your understanding of human psychology turns into your greatest asset. You understand those behaviors not as evidence which you have to relent, but as affirmation that your obstacles are essential and running. Healthful people don't enhance whilst you set limits, they admire them. Most effective folks who are cashing in on the absence of limitations react with hostility to their establishment. Your empathy, now covered by using awareness, lets in you to recognize why humans react this manner without taking duty for managing their reactions. You could see that their anger comes from losing access to something they by no means earned. Their harm comes from confronting the reality that they were taking extra than they have been giving. Their confusion comes from having to expand new strategies for purchasing their desires met. However, information would not require accommodating. Empathy doesn't call for allowing. You could experience compassion for a person's war to evolve for your barriers at the same time as nevertheless keeping those limitations. This is possibly the most sophisticated emotional ability you increase, the ability to keep space for others' feelings without being controlled by them. This shift begins in silence. You begin looking at more than participating. You start listening not to assist, however, to analyze, not to heal, but to recognize styles. You broaden what Renaissance thinkers called spresura, the artwork of creating difficult things appearance effortless. But your version is one of a kind. You're making emotional intelligence appear like indifference. You make strategic questioning appear to be herbal waft. The world taught you that feeling deeply intended feeling ache. That understanding others intended soaking up their chaos, that empathy required you to drain yourself to fill someone else's void. But you've located something revolutionary: empathy without self-destruction. Information without absorption, connection without price. This discovery basically challenges one in every of society's most pervasive myths, that emotional sensitivity calls for emotional vulnerability. That to recognize a person's pain, you must convey it. That to expose compassion, you need to sacrifice your own properly being. These beliefs create what psychologists name empathic misery, where your challenge for others will become a supply of your very own struggling. But evolutionary psychology, well known, shows why this technique is in the long run counterproductive. In nature, folks who sacrifice themselves for others without making sure their very own survival don't bypass on their genes or their awareness. The most hit caregivers in the animal nation are individuals who hold their own electricity even as helping others. They remember that depleting yourself serves no person in the long time. You start to recognize that what society calls selflessness is regularly definitely a form of learned helplessness disguised as virtue. When you consistently prioritize others' comfort over your very own increase, you're now not being noble. You are heading off the soreness of putting limitations and dealing with capacity rejection. This insight results in what researchers name enlightened self-interest. The expertise that taking care of yourself isn't always selfish, it is strategic. When you operate from a complete cup in preference to an empty one, you've got greater to provide folks that without a doubt deserve your care. While you guard your energy instead of squander it, you could invest it greater accurately. The transformation entails developing what neuroscientists name emotional regulation, the capacity to experience emotions without being beaten with the aid of them. You learn to feel a person's anger without becoming irritated yourself, to witness someone's disappointment without drowning in despair, to apprehend someone's worry without turning into afraid. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you strong. It doesn't make you uncaring. It makes you greater powerful for your caring. When you're now not continuously reactive to others' emotional states, you can respond from an area of preference instead of compulsion. You find out that authentic empathy virtually calls for emotional limitations. Without them, you're now not definitely understanding others. You are merging with them. You are no longer helping them system their emotions. You're taking on their emotional work. You are not helping their boom. You're enabling their stagnation by eliminating the soreness that motivates change. This consciousness transforms the way you view relationships totally. You start to keep in mind that the healthiest connections are between whole humans, no longer between someone who gives the whole thing and someone who takes everything. That mutual appreciate requires mutual obligation. That real intimacy occurs whilst each humans display up absolutely. Now, not when one individual shows up completely at the same time as the alternative stays hidden. The practical implications are profound. You prevent speeding to fill uncomfortable silences. You stop offering unsolicited recommendation. You forestall taking duty for others' emotional reactions. You stop explaining yourself when simple statements suffice. You stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. This creates what social psychologists name relational equilibrium, a natural balance where healthful people are drawn on your authenticity whilst bad human beings are repelled with the aid of your boundaries. Your social circle evidently reorganizes around individuals who respect intensity over drama, quality over amount, authenticity over performance. You stroll into rooms differently now. Your presence has weight, but not inside the way humans expect. You are no longer acting self-belief or projecting strength. You are sincerely occupying space without apology. Human beings sense something has changed, however they can't call it. They're drawn to you, but they cannot get right of entry to you the manner they once did. This is the Machiavellian insight applied to non-public sovereignty. The simplest electricity is the strength others do not understand you possess. You do not announce your boundaries. You virtually forestall crossing them for others. You do not declare your really worth. You encompass it through your choices. You do not explain your distance. You surely create area among yourself and what would not serve you. The psychology at the back of this technique is sophisticated. Machiavelli understood that direct disagreement often creates resistance at the same time as subtle redirection creates compliance. Whilst you announce your boundaries, you invite argument. Whilst you honestly put in force them via your actions, you create new patterns without debate. This precept applies beautifully to emotional limitations. While you tell someone they're draining your strength, you have opened a negotiation approximately whether or not they're actually draining or whether or not you are simply being sensitive. When you without a doubt grow to be much less available for draining interactions, you've changed the dynamic without developing a conflict. The key insight is that most people aren't consciously manipulative. They're unconsciously opportunistic. They take what is freely given without considering the value to the giver. When you stop gifting away, they both learn how to value what they're receiving, or they flow on to easier assets. Either final results serves your nicely being. This creates what behavioral economists call discovered possibilities. Human beings' proper priorities grow to be obvious through their moves. When sources end up scarce, whilst it's slow, interest and emotional exertions are now not unlimited. You find out who honestly values you as opposed to who truly values what you offer. The transformation entails growing what intelligence analysts call operational safety, protecting precious records from people who may use it towards you. In emotional terms, this indicates now not sharing your vulnerabilities with those who haven't confirmed sincere, not revealing your triggers to folks who would possibly make the most them, no longer explaining your increase to folks that gain from your previous limitations. This does not make you secretive, it makes you selective. You still share deeply, but only with the ones who have validated the ability to maintain that sharing with care. You continue to trust, however you permit human beings to earn that consider gradually in preference to granting it right away. The Machiavellian awareness right here is profound. Information is energy, and emotional facts is a number of the maximum powerful information of all. While someone knows exactly what hurts you, what frightens you, what you desperately want, they preserve exquisite impact over you. Guarding this information till you're positive of a person's character is not paranoia, it is understanding. You start to understand that many relationships are sincerely facts, amassing operations disguised as friendship. Humans ask probing questions no longer from actual hobby, but from unconscious records collection. They need to apprehend your weaknesses, your insecurities, your desires, so that you can function themselves advantageously within the relationship. This realization doesn't make you suspicious of everybody. It makes you more sophisticated on your assessment of human beings' motivations. You analyze to differentiate among interest born of care and interest born of calculation, between hobby on your nicely being and interest in your usefulness. The realistic utility entails what spies call compartmentalization, sharing specific components of yourself with one-of-a-kind humans primarily based on their verified trustworthiness and emotional capacity. Your private fears might be shared handiest together with your closest confidants. Your professional struggles is probably mentioned handiest with mentors. Your own family dynamics is probably explored most effective with skilled therapists. This is not deception, it is appropriate disclosure. Not all of us merits get admission to each a part of your inner international. Not all of us has earned the right to understand your full story. No longer everybody possesses the emotional adulthood to address your entire truth without the usage of it towards you later. Machiavelli wrote that it's miles better to be feared than loved in case you can't be each. However, you've determined a third option: to be understood without being readable, to be reputable without being explained, to be present without being to be had for exploitation. Your empathy hasn't disappeared. It is developed, where when you felt pressured to restore each broken character who crossed your route, now you understand that some people decide upon their brokenness as it excuses their conduct. Wherein after you absorbed others' emotions as though they were your personal, now you look at them like climate styles, noteworthy however now not non-public. This evolution represents one of the most state-of-the-art forms of emotional intelligence. The potential to feel without being managed by feeling, to understand without being fed on through know-how, to care without being depleted by using caring. The mental mechanism behind this variation is charming. What occurs is an essential shift in what researchers call locus of control, the degree to which you believe you've got energy over occasions affecting your existence. Formerly, you could have had an external locus of manipulate concerning others' emotions, believing you had been answerable for how they felt and reacted. Now you have developed an internal locus of manage. You remember the fact that whilst you may impact others via your phrases and actions, you can't manage their responses. Their anger is their anger. Their unhappiness is their unhappiness. Their joy is their pleasure. You could witness these emotions, recognize them, even respond to them as it should be. However, you aren't liable for creating, preserving, or resolving them. This shift liberates you from what psychologists call emotional enchantment, the blurring of obstacles among your emotional enjoy and others. You start to recognize that after someone is angry at you, they're frequently absolutely angry at themselves and projecting it outward. While someone claims you have hurt them, they are frequently revealing approximately their own insecurities than about your movements. This doesn't mean you come to be callous to others' ache. As a substitute, you broaden what therapists name differentiated empathy, the capacity to recognize and reply to others' emotions without taking ownership of them. You could comfort a person who's unhappy without becoming sad yourself. You could validate someone who's irritated without accepting blame for his or her anger. The transformation additionally entails developing what cognitive scientists name emotional recognition, consciousness of your own emotional approaches, and the ability to manage them strategically. You grow to be conscious now not just of what you're feeling, however, why you are feeling it, wherein it came from, and whether or not it serves your highest appropriate. This creates a sophisticated form of emotional aikido, the usage of the electricity of others' feelings without being beaten through them. While a person directs anger at you, rather than absorbing it or reflecting it returned, you could redirect it. You might respond with interest. Help me apprehend what is certainly bothering you. This transforms the dynamic from assault defense to exploration understanding. You learn to apprehend what researchers call emotional contagion, the unconscious mimicking of others' emotional states. Formerly, while someone around you became aggravating, you became aggravating. When they have been excited, you became excited. Once they were depressed, you felt their weight. Now, you've got advanced what psychologists call emotional immunity. The capacity to remain in your own emotional state no matter what others are experiencing. This doesn't make you unresponsive. It makes you greater genuinely responsive because your reactions come from desire as opposed to automated mirroring. The realistic implications are transformative. You prevent apologizing for others' pain along with your obstacles. You stop explaining your desires to people who need to already understand them. You forestall adjusting your real self to make others sense greater cozy with their inauthentic selves. This creates what sociologists name genuine presence, a manner of being it's really yourself instead of an overall performance designed to elicit specific responses from others. Human beings sense this authenticity right now, even though they cannot articulate what is distinct approximately you. A few are interested in this authenticity as it gives them permission to be true as well. Others are threatened by using it as it highlights their personal, performative nature. This natural sorting process enables you become aware of who belongs on your lifestyles and who turned into genuinely interested in the masks you used to wear. That is what makes you risky within the truest experience. Not because you damage others, however, because you can no longer be harmed via them. No longer because you manage, but due to the fact you may not be manipulated. You've come to be proof against the emotional methods that once controlled you. And that immunity is terrifying to individuals who depended on your tender coronary heart to excuse their tough picks. The anomaly deepens whilst you recognize that your greatest strength, your ability to sense and understand, will become your best guard whilst nicely directed. You may feel manipulation before it begins. You could sense dishonesty like an exchange in atmospheric pressure. You may apprehend emotional blackmail before the primary guilt trip is even unpacked.